Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thank you for the American Gym Society for the invitation to host this webinar today. We're going to be talking about VUCA, anti-fragility, and post-traumatic growth. This is not going to be, this might be some new things for you here, and hopefully it'll be interesting. So we have some polls to start it out to kind of make it interactive. And my daughter said that everyone doesn't know the answer to this. So I'll give you the question, and then I'll give you a second to answer in the polls, and Kyle will tabulate that for us. So first question, 1969 was the summer of what? Flowers, love, or music? I'll give you guys a second. There's about 100 people on the call, so should take a minute or two. A second or two, not a minute or two. Okay, Kyle, let's see what we've got. Oh, so we must have a fairly mature group here today, because 83% of you got it correct, the summer of love. No one guessed the summer of flowers, and 17% guessed the summer of music. That's understandable. So let's move to the next question. 1988 was the summer of what? Springsteen, greed, or fire? This is interactive. This is going to keep you guys awake at least for a few minutes. We only have like 4 poll questions, but this will be kind of fun to get us started. Make sure everyone's awake. And morning in the east on the West Coast, and afternoon on the East Coast, and everywhere in between. Okay, Kyle, let's see what we've got. Oh, the summer of Springsteen, 43% said, 27% said the summer of greed, and 30% said the summer of fire. Thank you. That was a pretty good split. I'm glad I guessed Springsteen, but it was actually the summer of fire. So if you look at this picture, this is Yellowstone National Park. And I don't know if many of you remember, but in 1988, there was a big fire. There was actually 250 different fires in Yellowstone. And it was just an absolute mess. And we'll talk about that for a little bit. And you'll see how this relates to our situation today momentarily. The park closed for the first time ever. We've had a lot of closings taking place around us now. 25,000 people were involved in the fire suppression efforts. 36% of the park burned, almost 800,000 acres, but 36% of the park burned. Cost 120 million bucks, and that would be 260 million in today's dollars to put it out. And finally, a 1/4 inch of snow on September 11th stopped the fires from progressing. They weren't able to completely extinguish them for about 2 more months, but a 1/4 inch of snow is what finally stopped them from progressing. The next part we're going to talk about is VUCA. So Kyle, I think you have a poll for us here, and this really has to do with how many of you have done your homework. How many of you are familiar with the term VUCA? V-U-C-A. Simple yes or no will do. But let's just see who's Googled it and who hasn't. Don't Google it now. We'll get into it in a minute. Okay, Kyle, let's see what we've got. Okay, well, that's good. At least this won't be boring to all of you. So 13% know what VUCA is and 87% do not. So let's talk about it for just a minute. VUCA stands for, it's an acronym created by a military college, and it's been adopted by lots of MBA programs and business schools because they love acronyms just as much as the military does. It stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And I think we can agree that today we are living in a VUCA world. Volatile, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Let's take each word and kind of just break it down for a little bit. Sorry for all the words in the slide, but V stands for volatility. the nature and dynamics of change, and the nature and speed of change forces and change catalyst. U, uncertainty, the lack of predictability, the prospect for surprise, and a sense of awareness and understanding of issues and events. C, complexity, the multiplex of forces, that sounds like a military term, doesn't it? The confounding of issues, no cause and effect chain, and confusion that surrounds organizations. And finally, A, ambiguity, the haziness of reality, the potential for misreads, and the mixed meanings of conditions and cause and effect confusion. So that's what VUCA means. Another way to describe it in a short phrase is a fog of war. So if you can imagine this war scene, this happens to be in Baghdad, and this is in the daytime, but you can still see there's smoke and haze around. Imagine all the different forces. It's hard to tell who's friend, who's foe, who's allied with who. This complexity, this VUCA world, was used to describe the war situation post the Soviet breakdown. So before this, the world was kind of divided into communism and capitalism. Communism was obviously headed by the USSR, and capitalism was headed by the USA. And things were pretty clear. But after that, it's a VUCA world. So, from a military standpoint, the explanation is it's just much less clear than it used to be. Cause and effect things that always were. You could, if you did this, then this would happen. Many of those things have changed. So I love this sense of fog of war. I think we would agree when we think back on the analogy of Yellowstone burning. You can imagine almost 800,000 acres, a third of this park burning. There was lots of things that led to this, but this was a VUCA situation. They had extreme drought, questionable fire suppression policy, and really fire suppression policies that contradicted one another. Jurisdictional turf wars combined with the sheer size of Yellowstone and the varied terrain all led to a foggy, messy situation. You can imagine that that would be a very challenging situation to try to put that fire out. Interestingly, the damage was not near as extensive or permanent as they originally thought it would be in Yellowstone. The regeneration was faster, and the diversity was actually the new diversity actually strengthened the ecosystem and made it much more robust than it was before. That's a picture on the left. It's the same place. One is on fire and one is post-fire. We're now going to talk about a concept called anti-fragility. And there's a book called Anti-Fragile, which I would recommend to you, except for the fact that it is very long and very wordy, but the concept is really solid. And I really find it interesting, obviously, which is why we're discussing it today. And there's three concepts that are involved here. The first is fragile. You know, the title of the book is Anti-Fragile, but when you think of what is fragile, I picked this picture because it was just simply to explain that this was fragile. A wine glass is fragile. It doesn't take rough handling well. Sometimes they break during shipping. A simple slip even onto the carpet sometimes will break them. Not a lot of rough handling and they're gone. So fragile things are easy to break and harmed by stress, impact, blows, and carelessness. That's my own definition, but I think you all know what fragile is. So the opposite of fragile, what if a wine glass is fragile, what is the opposite of fragile? And because we're a group primarily of jewelers, I thought I would pick this analogy. It's coming, here we go. This is an old, I don't know if it's a sub or a GMT, but an old Rolex watch. And you can see by this watch, by the looks, that this watch definitely has had some misuse. And it was not improved by the misuse, and there's some cosmetic situations there. You can see the crystal scratch, the band is scratched a little bit, but this watch runs just fine. So mechanically, the job that it was intended to do, it's doing. It's doing a great job. Clearly, it's been mishandled. So I like the term robust here, but you can think of durable, tough, waterproof, dustproof, any kind of proof. We might, if we think of our own businesses, we might say recession proof or recession resistant or corona proof, whatever the case may be, not harmed or helped by the rough handling. So the author of this book, Antifragile, proposes that there really is no accurate word for the opposite of fragile, because the glass is harmed. The robust watch, in this case, is not particularly harmed, nor is it improved. Anti-fragile. The first thing that came to mind for me was Marcus Luttrell. Hopefully some of you were at the conclave in Washington, D.C. several years ago. I think it was 4 years ago now. But Marcus Luttrell is the lone survivor. This guy, who was played by Mark Wahlberg in the movie, is an absolute badass. This guy got tougher, smarter, better by getting beat nearly to death. The movie is great. To hear him speak and to read the book is much better. I use this as an example because he is just so much tougher after having gone through this horrendous situation where he literally is the only survivor from this large group in this military expedition. So what else is anti-fragile? So let's just, going back to the original analogy, hopefully some of you have been to Yellowstone post 1988. It is better than ever. I went to Yellowstone in 1991, in the spring of 91. And I lived in Montana for a couple of years. I flew over the Yellowstone fires in 88. It looked like I was landing in hell. And I wore a mask for 3 months to keep myself from choking on the smoke and the soot that was in the air. And I thought, I want to see what a mess this situation is. So I went to Yellowstone and it looked like this. It was verdant and lush and almost pristine. That's not to say you couldn't see a little bit of a burned area here or there, but it was just tremendously improved. It was improved and was actually proved to be anti-fragile. I could give analogies. There's so many. The biodiversity was increased. There's just dozens and dozens of analogies, but we're not here to talk about Yellowstone. We're here to learn about the terms and to talk about how that applies to your business. Getting back to the term anti-fragile for just a second, I love this quote. The fragile wants tranquility. The anti-fragile grows from disorder, and the robust doesn't care too much. Kyle, let's put up the next poll. And you guys have to listen to this one. I don't think I wrote out a slide for it. Fill in the blank. What comes to mind? Post-traumatic blank. Stress disorder, recovery, or growth. Okay, we'll give you a second. Okay, Kyle, let's see what they've got. Yeah, that's what came to mind to me too. 83% said stress disorder, 8% said recovery. The other 10% of you actually read the title to this webinar. Congratulations, that's great. But yeah, when I think of post-traumatic, the next words to come to mind are stress disorder. But trauma doesn't have to defeat you. It can be a perfect opportunity for growth. Don't just make a comeback. Use it as a catalyst forward. So the question is, what in the world is this post-traumatic growth? It's a fascinating concept that many things, organic particularly, and businesses are organic. They're more like a living organism than they are. They're more like a cat than they are like a dishwasher, to use that analogy. Many organic things can actually benefit from trauma. Think about it. Most people that we know have had some trauma in their lives, and many of those people come back stronger and more robust, not just resilient, not just able to take another trauma, but better than if they hadn't had one. Let's take a minute and talk about VUCA 2.0. So this was, I'm going to give you the guy's name just because I didn't write it down in the slide. Bill George is his name. He's a Harvard guy, and clearly he's an optimist. So he talks about VUCA 2.0. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this, but there's vision, understanding, courage, and adaptability. Let's talk about these for just a minute. Let's demonstrate vision as we lead our teams, communicate with our clients, and serve in our communities. I have seen vision come from American Gem Society jewelers and other business leaders through this last period of time. What sort of vision have we seen? Definitely within our own business, by communicating with our teams. We've definitely reached out to our clients, and if we haven't, this is something we're going to talk about. We suggest you do. And I've seen people within our AGS community serve in their communities. I've seen people buy meals for healthcare workers. I've seen people give gifts to some of those frontline people. I've seen lots of different things. So we've seen some vision there. So this is one of these takeaways where you have to think, what vision do I have? What vision can I lead with? We must have an in-depth understanding of our strengths and weaknesses, and that takes honesty and transparency. We also need to have an understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of our team members. So American Gem Society jewelers are no different than any other business. You have team members that are very well-rounded, and you have some that are quite specialized. A point was made on a webinar that I attended earlier, well, I guess late last week, that it might be time to consider bringing those people back in sooner that are more well-rounded and can do lots of things versus just the specialist. We also need to understand our market and our clients. I hate to tell you this, but most jewelry stores in the United States are a sea of sameness. If you have not figured out a way to make yourself different and stand out from the competition, now is the time to do it. But you need to understand your market. Who is your market? What geographical area is your market? How far do people really travel to come to you? And you've got to understand your clients. And that is critical. You've got to understand who they are, what motivates them, what their financial situation is. You've got to understand a lot about that, and that takes some digging. Now is also the time to have courage to step up to these challenges and make audacious decisions and take some risk. So as business owners, you are the risk takers in the business. There's no question. It's not the time to play it completely safe. If you play it completely safe, that's like buying the same things that your competitors buy because you know those things will sell. You know you will never realize the greatest reward if you always play it safe. Audacious decisions and take some risk. We must remain adaptable to this rapidly changing environment. We must nimbly adapt to changing external circumstances without altering our strategic course. It's important to remember who we are, and if we have never really identified that, now's the time to identify the core of who you really are, what you really want to be, who your ideal clients are. But you have the ability, because you do not have 200 stores, or 1,000 stores, you have the ability to rapidly change. So this is a tremendous advantage that AGS stores and other independent retailers have, is that you can look at the environment, make a decision, and you can change. So that's tremendous. I love this acronym. This is kind of the new improved VUCA: vision, understanding, courage, adaptability. Adaptable. Some things you can do to help your team and to help your business grow. I say the first thing you want to do is you want it to be about those people that you hired. I help jewelers all around the country hire, and I can tell you there's going to be a shakeup. There's no question. There's going to be a shakeup. People are going to be unemployed. New people will be hired. There's no question that that will happen. But good people that are willing to make retail a career are not easy to find. Good people that are honest and smart and hardworking, willing to work the hours that we require, is not that easy. You know that. If you tried to hire people, you know that it is not a slam dunk. The first thing you need to do is be there for your team. Talk to them individually, ask them questions about how they're physically doing. This should be an actual phone call, at least in the beginning. If you've not done this, it's time to do it. If you have done it and it's been more than a week or 10 days, it's probably time to do it again. Call each team member and ask how they're doing physically and mentally. There's a lot of people that are really cooped up. I'm very fortunate. I have 1,200 acres adjoining my property, and I can walk right out my door and walk for 5 or 6 hours at a time and not see another soul. Great for social distancing, that's for sure. Offer to connect them to resources. If that means unemployment, that's what you have. If you've had to furlough, offer to do that. If it means whatever resources are available, you need to become the expert in your community and offer those to your team. To send a meal or something like that to the family of your team members is something to consider. I've had some jewelers that have done that, and it's meant a lot to their team. I know that for sure. And you've got to keep them updated on news that you have having to do with your business. Anything that you learn, we understand that, going back to the VUCA analogy, that this is a rapidly changing landscape. It changes every couple days, it seems like, and there's new things come out, and there's misinformation that gets clarified. That is important to share with your team. That can be through email, that can be through text, that can be through a Zoom meeting, whatever you think is appropriate. Everyone has their own personal ways, their own best way to do that. Could be through a Slack group. That's something to look into if you have an executive team that you'd like to bring in. One piece of advice is not to talk about you and your financial situation. There's no question that as business owners, you do have more to lose than they do as employees. But they don't care. They didn't make that risk. They only are concerned about themselves. And you might think it's unfair. You might think that they should think about you too, but I can tell you they don't. It's all about what their personal situation is. So don't talk about your own personal situation. Don't talk about the risk that you're taking. The next thing you can do that's really important is clienteling. So this is not necessarily direct selling. This is clienteling 2.0. This is going to be a softer, gentler clienteling. But there's no question that your greatest return on investment is directly connecting with your clients. Now, if you've done a good job before, good for you. You've got the information. If you furloughed your employees and you are not going to allow them to do any clienteling, it comes back to you. The owner, whoever is still at the helm, has to do this. You may adjust the numbers to make it manageable for you, but ideally you will would be able to communicate this information to your team about their top 100 clients. And I would suggest that you check in with them, with those clients through text would be ideal because it's non-intrusive and people respond to it, call, and sometimes writing them. And I would check in with them not to say, how are you doing? How's everything over there with you? That could be for some, but most of the time you're thanking them and telling them that you miss them. That you just want this front of mind mental real estate. That is really a valuable place to be able to own that. When I think of jewelry, I think of XYZ Jewelers in my town and the guy that texted me and said, I miss you. Thanks for your business. Done. And it sounds crazy. It is April. I know this sounds crazy, but I'm telling you, your best salespeople every year run out of time and don't send enough holiday cards, and they don't write personal messages inside because they're busy. So take that time to do that now. A little bit more clienteling. Birthdays and anniversaries are still happening. I hope and strongly recommend that you have a CRM system in place, client relationship management system in place, that helps you identify birthdays and anniversaries. And I hope that you're in the habit of contacting those clients that buy from you a couple of weeks before or 4 weeks before, depending on your type of business, before birthday and anniversary. And guess what? People are having birthdays and anniversaries every day. They're still having them. And you could be as funny and clever as you want. You could just say, hey, wanted to remind you of Susan's birthday coming up in a couple of weeks. It's an unusual time, but if I can be of any assistance, I'm here for you. It could be something like that, or perhaps you've got a relationship where you could say something like the sample script I've got here. Time to get out the crayons and construction paper and make Sally a birthday card so that when this stuff's over, you've still got a wife to buy jewelry for. You can get away with a lot with humor. It lets them know you're there. It lets them know Sally's birthday is there. And it lets them know that you want and need their business when the time is right. You're also being sensitive to the fact that times are not normal. But just because times are not normal doesn't mean no one is buying. There are sectors of the economy that have more, that are at least doing the same as they were before, and some are doing better. The medical professionals are busy, busy, busy. They have a lot more time than they have money right now. There's lots of opportunities to sell. You just have to do it in a very classy, tasteful way. Also, it's important to remember that there's been many people that have had to cancel vacations or cancel other trips. I have a client who had just made a big sale to a customer who was going to redo their kitchen. It was going to be a $60,000 kitchen. The guy bought a $20,000 piece of jewelry for his wife because the kitchen, everything is just on hold. It's still going to happen, but it's on hold. You can be a solution. You can help there. This is also a time to ask for online reviews. And maybe it's not the first thing you say. Maybe if we go back to the original where you're saying, hey, thanks for your business, I sure miss you. If they respond, 1 out of 10 is going to respond. Those 1 out of 10 that respond, are care about you, care about your business, know you're local, know that you want to do the right thing. They are the most likely people to give you a good review. Send them a link directly to a Facebook review or a Google review that they can just click, 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 and tell them, hey, if you want to do me a real favor, write something nice in there. The 5-star reviews are huge, but a 5-star review with an actual comment is exponentially better. The next thing you can do is don't forget about your team. You can come away from this thing with a lot more knowledge and expertise. Your team can and certainly should as well. You should be having virtual team meetings. I noticed that on the Facebook page that Worthmore, I don't know if Harris and Jerry are on here today, but Worthmore in Atlanta posted a little video of their Zoom team meeting. They've got 20 some employees, and they had them all on the Zoom meeting looking like the Brady Bunch. And they said, we're still here for you. We're still working away. It's fantastic. It's great to have the meeting. And it's also a great opportunity to share the fact that you're having a meeting. Create a positive agenda. This must be structured. This cannot be a gripe session. This has got to be positive. If you need a hand with that, I'm happy to help you. Reach out to me and we can talk about it. There's ways that you can do what you need to do in a positive way. There is no opportunity for anyone beating anyone up at this time. AGS has done a great thing by opening up that beginner course. I took it a month or two before the event, and they made it free. It is fantastic. I really liked it, and I learned some new things. I've been in the jewelry business since I was a kid, and I've gone through the courses before, but this was a new course to me, and I absolutely learned new things that will help me to be able to sell jewelry better. GIA is offering some continuing education for GGs, and De Beers is offering some free online courses. I know all the Forever Mark dealers may have already started with it, but they offered that to the general jewelry population as well. There's others. There's a couple of hallmarking courses from a company in England. I can provide a list. If you shoot me an email, I'm happy to send you a list. It's down there on the bottom of the screen. Attend webinars. You're doing it right now. Attend webinars to do with your business, but let people know that you're interested in webinars. I have a buddy that is on the faculty at Cornell University, and he invited me to their whole MBA webinar curriculum, and they are fantastic. They have nothing to do with the jewelry business, but all to do with business. It's like I'm getting this great MBA education absolutely for free. And so check with other places and check for webinars to do with your business or just with business or whatever you like. Now is a great time. You can go down rabbit holes in any subject you want. But if you say, I really want to learn how to do CAD better, or I really want to learn how to improve my social media, and how about stacking photographs in as a skill? These things can all be learned for free through YouTube or other such things. It is a different world than 10 years ago. You can learn anything you want just through YouTube. Read or listen to business books. I mentioned that I've been hiking a lot. I have been cranking through some books on Audible, and these have been really valuable. A lot of times if I listen to a book on Audible or read it, it just kind of washes over me, and I'm lucky to take a few points away. But if I was preparing a book review or a book report to share with the team, it really sinks in a lot more. So I would suggest that as well. That's a great way to have that positive agenda, is to have someone read a book and give a 10-minute report on that book and then offer it to the next person. Maybe it's a virtual book or an Audible rather than handing it off like we used to do. It's also time to be strategic. So there are so many of you that are great jewelers that are so busy doing the things that you do to make you successful that you don't often take time to think about your business. You are doing your business, but to think creatively and think, what do I do to get it to the next level? It's time to be strategic. Some marketing things. Have your clients nominate a local hero to be recognized through your social media and give them a nice piece of jewelry. I know that Amanda and her team at Nelson Coleman in Maryland have been doing this, and it's been going fantastic. I know a couple of you have been doing this. It's a great way to get social media buzz and be there for the people that are there for you. Some things that are not as pleasant, you might have to communicate with your landlord and other vendors to negotiate payments. We know they're business owners too. They're entitled to what the debts that we've incurred, but we have to be smart with our cash and some of these PPP and these other loans will come through for some of you. It is a first come, first serve. We're not all going to get it, but and that could help a little bit, but let's be cautious with your cash and negotiate with those vendors. All of you know a website is a work in progress. A website is never done, and those photos can almost always be improved. The descriptions can be improved, and sometimes, you know, you should try to buy a piece of jewelry if you've got a website that enabled where you can buy from the website. You should try it sometime yourself and see how seamless it is or isn't. And I can tell you more times than not, it is not that seamless. The last strategic point that I'm going to suggest is create a client advisory board. Many of you have heard me discuss this before, but it is the single greatest thing that you can do to tap into your clients, to learn who they are, what they love, what they want to buy, what nonprofits they support, what matters to them, where you could market to them. Create this client advisory board. Now is a great time to do it. I can help you with that. Some best practices. We're going to go to the Q&A. This is where you have an opportunity to chime in. And the question that we want to ask is, what have you done? You're also welcome to ask any questions or make any observations. But what have you done, or what will you do that will help you emerge better from the situation? And then what have you seen others do? So we'll take a few minutes and see if we can get some comments there. So one question is, how do you get your staff members to show up on time for morning roll call? So I read a interesting social media post from a good jeweler in Ottawa, where he was saying that sticking to your regular schedule as a person on a personal level is really important to do. And I can tell you that I don't think most of your staff are sticking to a regular schedule, and I don't know that you can expect that to happen. But I think just the exact same as you would expect them to show up at a certain time for a staff meeting, you can expect them to show up for the proper time for a Zoom staff meeting or Facebook Messenger or whatever, GoToMeeting, whatever you choose to use. I think if that is a problem, you've got bigger issues, to be frank. And a jeweler from Virginia says that he's trying to stay in touch with his clients so that when all this is over, he's in the front of their brains and thoughts. That's exactly what you've got to do. And it can't be the same thing as when Nike sends you a mass email. That's not going to do the same things. You've got to just kind of own that mental real estate by staying in front of them. And like I said, actually, William, it was one of your neighbors that is handwriting notes, just thanking them, saying, without you, there is no business, and thanking them for their business. And our good friend Jenny from Chicago is asking what a client advisory board is. The short version of that, that's a whole nother webinar, but I'll give you the short version because I love to do it. A client advisory board is a group of women that you've selected and you've identified as a sampling of your clients. So that would be, for most retail jewelers, it's going to be 30 to 45 women, and there's going to be a variety of age ranges. There's going to be a variety of disposable income level, and there's going to be a variety of different occupations represented. These women are going to come in quarterly, and in this case, we would probably have to do it through Zoom if this continues on, but maybe we can set it up now and have it to where these women are going to come in quarterly. And the first part of the evening, it's always an evening event, is just a social half hour, 45 minutes. There's always cocktails and hors d'oeuvres and that sort of thing. And you really pick their brains on a variety of, so then you would have them sit down after the cocktail hour and ask them questions. And you can ask them anything about your business. You can ask, what nonprofit events are you going to? Where do you think we should donate? What do you think about this line of jewelry? Do you think it would sell? What do you think our staff's dress code should be? And you could show some pictures. What music do you think we should have on in the store? So often these questions are mentioned on Jewelers Helping Jewelers, and there are so many questions, or there's so many different answers to render it completely useless, because there's so many different markets. There's no answer. But that's a great question, Jenny. Thank you very much. Let's see what Laura says. Yeah, so Laura is the master of keeping in touch with her clients. And she's saying she sent out links to Gi8 Kids, which is fantastic. People love it, especially a lot of people that are stuck with their kids at home trying to figure out some sort of curriculum. A list of books about jewelry, a list of movies about jewelry that she read in JCK. And she's gotten some good responses, but mostly she's hoping to keep that top of mind status. Let's see, a jeweler is asking what I offer to help jewelers revamp and improve their business so that it can be better when the new normal arrives. Yes, thank you for that. I appreciate it. So a little bit of a shameless plug after that softball I'm being thrown. I help jewelers all around the country and in Canada to improve their business by looking to kind of focusing on what grows their business. We talk about strategic plans, strategy, culture, and leadership. And then there's a whole lot of specifics after that. I teach about clienteling. I teach about hiring right. I've also helped people hire as needed. So we can talk about that. You can look at my website. It's there at the bottom. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. So another comment that a particular jeweler has posted photos of herself working at home on her business Facebook page and Instagram. Yeah, that's fantastic to see your jeweler sitting at their kitchen table writing notes or sorting pearls or grading diamonds or whatever. It kind of pulls the curtain back a little bit on what people do. But again, that's all front of mind. That is really valuable real estate, is that front of mind real estate. So we need to think about the fact that people will absolutely buy jewelry again. They will buy jewelry from people that they have a relationship with, and people that they remember, and people that they know care about their business. So I think that might be it for the questions. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I think that is the end of the questions. So I'll move to the next slide here, and that's just simply my contact information. I would be happy to talk to any of you if you would like to talk about ways to strategically make your business better coming out of this. I'd love to chat with you about it. If you've got a specific pain point, something that's bothering you, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. If you have suggestions on ways that other jewelers can improve their business, or ways you've done it that you think others can do it, I'd love to hear that as well. We'll give another second or two for last questions, and then we're going to wrap up. Thank you very much. I know you took time out of the middle of your day to come, and I know you're doing the right thing by trying to improve your business. And just remember, it is a VUCA world. You are anti-fragile, and there is post-traumatic growth. It's a real thing. The opportunity is there. Thank you very much.